All right, class, it's time for another great episode, class, with Dr. Kimya. Today, we're going to be speaking about Black savings and Black spending power.
Okay. So is that to the theme of money, power, and spec, what you need in life?
Hashtag Lil Kim.
So here's the complexity of Black spending power. It has to be consistent. So examples will be if you patronize businesses daily, most that are not Black owned, many that offer unhealthy foods, a lot of liquor, tobacco, and all types of things, then boycotting something does not have the same effect that people pretend it does, because the boycott is something that's short term and quick. However, for people who think that there's a lot of Black spending power, we have to understand the consistency in that notion, because you still have people who will say there was no such thing as Black Wall Street. There's no such thing as telling our people to develop our own resources, our own wealth building, and our own economic options, because people feel like we're too oppressed to have that. So I tell people, if you don't believe in Black Wall Street, if you don't believe in the cooperative economic plans that have been proposed by our people for more than a century, then that means you really cannot truly believe in Black spending power in terms of boycotting certain places. Because if the money does not matter when it's developing our own people together, UNITY, then why do you want the money to matter to non-Blacks such that things are going to crumble because we're not showing up? So that's something I want our people to understand. It has to be consistency. Consistency is the balance that's needed for our people. It doesn't have to be on any side of the exaggeration. It has to be in the middle where people understand. I was going to do a money in the middle thing, but where people understand,
She's
where
so
people
old
understand
school.
it has to be a true balance to what people are proposing. So yeah.
So let's talk about this Black savings power, because in our show notes before this, you mentioned that there was a concept of Black spending power and a concept of Black savings power. And I really have never heard Black savings power.
Yeah. So that should be the foundation of Black families, Black communities, and Black collectives. Teach about savings, teach about what it means to have access to banks and other resources that talk about financial development. There are free classes provided by different organizations, including Black organizations. There also are free classes at libraries, and these libraries are funded through our taxes. So, what does it mean to build up your savings account? So, for example, you can go to some credit unions, and when you spend your debit card, it takes few dollars and puts it into your savings account. What does it mean to build up your savings account without even thinking about it, because it's happening automatically because you're spending your debit card? That's what this really means. And not doing this as a people, we're not talking about percentage of our people doing it. We're talking about increasing this, including poor working class Blacks and lower middle class Blacks doing this more. Because if we're not developing that, then truly believe and understand that non-Blacks in particular are not the least bit threatened by boycotts. Because if we're not developing ourselves and each other economically, thinking that we're crumbling something on the other side, it's impossible for that to happen if you're crumbling on the inside as well.
That's intriguing. That's something to ponder. That's definitely something to ponder. And I guess the piece that's the most ponderific, if I'm making up terms,
Uh-huh.
like the most beautifulest thing in this
In the
world.
world, it's just like that. I get in you.
The most ponderific part is that I fully believe that there's no power in spending, there's power in investing. But I had never considered that there might be a power in saving. And what you just kind of described was how we can obtain power or obtain resources through savings. Uh, how do you move from savings to power, though, in your paradigm? And in the way that you're describing it, how does one having amassed a bunch of resources really turn into power?
All right. So when we're looking at, I think we're overusing the word power, you know, um, but I will just say access to resources in general. Because it's important to understand that there are a lot of people with investments, that they have financial planners doing their investments. However, as you know, investments do not allow you to pull from the investment if you're struggling financially. It does not allow you to hold over if you lose a job and need something to pull from it. There are a lot of investments and retirement that you can only pull a certain amount per year, even. So that's why financial advisors, and I always refer our people to some legitimate Black financial advisors who are not just on the street corner telling you to give them some money and then they disappear, but there's some legitimate Black financial advisors who do this work. And they will explain that in addition to having these investments, in addition to building up your retirement, you need to also be building up your savings account, because your savings account's what you have access to 24/7, right? So that is something that you can ignore. Ignore its existence, right? Because you don't have to automatically pull from it, but instead it's there in case you need that safety net and you need to pull from that. And so it's very doable. We have entire trainings and classes, and we have organizations and individuals that talk about this. I talk about this as well when I do economic development presentations, because I use Harold Cruz, Du Bois, Maggie Lena Walker, and them as some of the foundation of talking about Black economic resources. Because if we pretend we don't have resources, then that's a circular logic that's means it's tautological, which means it's not really logical. And it means that we're 5 centuries in regarding race, and we're still all the way back there. And as a people, we have to be the ones to progress and get past that. Nobody else, that's nobody else's task. That's only our task. So I want people to think about that. Of course, anyone who knows me and they've listened to me many times, I do not support a lot of things that people are outraged over. I tell people your outrage needs to be whether it was effective in the first place for our people. Okay, that needs to be the foundation of whether a topic is a topic that interests you. Is it a topic that's important? Is it something that's truly benefited our people beyond the surface level? So that's question one. Question two, boycotts and all that stuff. What point is it proving for the larger development if what you're boycotting is based on something that never helped our people in the first place? Further, if you're boycotting and now your only topic is the boycott, ruining a business, but there's no conclusion for our people, like building resources within our people, telling our people, here are the resources in your city, in your state, then there's nothing accomplished at all. There has to be longevity in the accomplishment. It can't be something that's a hot topic on these wealthy news stations. It can't be something that's a hot topic. And when we talk about people trying to pretend that everything caused the outcome. So there's different life results. Things like stock options reducing and all that stuff, it doesn't mean that that's happening for one reason. As you know, stock options and all of that changes for various reasons combined. We talk about the same thing when it comes to crime. Crime did not reduce because the mayor put POPO funding and popo in a certain area in Black City, right? Crime reduces for other reasons. So I want our people to understand you can't just look at the numbers. You can't just look at something that's being celebrated. You have to still be critical and conscious and say, is this really having an effect like people are assuming? And even if it was, do we really care and why? Because what is really benefiting our people? When it comes to any place, well, number one, DEI was not ever for us in the first place. So that's just something to highlight. But when it comes to any place, you actually have to see the results. You have to see what are employee benefits. You have to see what types of businesses does this place patronize itself. In other words, something that was okay. I will just say that just because Black folks are added does not mean that there's good outcomes. So that applies, and you can look back to affirmative action. So I also share writings, including those from Derek Bell, regarding affirmative action and how it started off quite well, 70s, 80s, and then Black people to this day remain not the majority of people who benefit from affirmative action. So same thing regarding DEI. So when understanding that, this is where our people really need to have and we don't all have to agree with stuff like we don't all have to agree. It's just that this something that's trendy on social media and on internet and news stations appears to be something that's effective. And I want our people to just be more informed and understand that just because something's popular and approved does not mean that it's actually doing something. It doesn't mean that it's changing the game. DEI, diversity trainings, all these things were all done so that people can say, yeah, things are improving without saying, look here, y'all smiling way too much. What are some real things being produced from this beyond the surface level? So the same thing beyond the surface level needs to happen for the people who insist on boycotting on behalf of DEI. Same thing that people who are patronizing businesses because they say, hey, we've got DEI stuff here. If Black folks don't realize that that's a way of marketing to Black people to get quick support from Black people without really proving stuff from Black people, that's an age-old tradition of tokenism. As my phone keeps falling down. That's an age-old tradition. That's an age-old tradition, and something yours is falling now. That's an age-old tradition of tokenism that Black people are easily angered, we're easily impressed, and we don't require evidence because Black people pretend that evidence, data is only for those formally educated Negroes. I want our people to understand that actually reading, learning, finding data, and looking at outcomes, not just shouting about outcomes at protests and boycotts and stuff, but actually looking at outcomes, that's something that our people have done for centuries, including those who were not formally educated. Like when I do the writing piece about Amabalo, Fannie Lou Hamer, these are people, even if they had a stern voice, they were not formally educated and they wanted to see actions and results and not just demanding things. So this is where if our trying to make $1 out of 15 cents, it's hard to be legit and still pay the rent. When you're looking at all of these details that are required, you have to know what is going to be the next step. Because I don't want to tell our people that everything's going to fail, because I love, support, respect our people. I appreciate what Jamal Bryant is doing. I appreciate what other people are doing regarding this as far as our people. But that doesn't mean it's something that's effective. It's just that I respect it because we don't all have to believe the same thing and do the same thing, but the result is still going to be the same outcome.
Now, the CEO of Target reached out and met with Pastor Reverend Al Sharpton.
Why?
It was surrounding the DEI initiatives. So a lot of people are asking these questions. Why did they choose Al Sharpton? Al Sharpton is not the representative for all of us. Why is Al positioning himself as this? Another question is, why did they go to Al Sharpton when Jamal Bryant has a more organized boycott, and Al Sharpton never organized the boycott and simply said he would support the idea? And so it's a lot of questions that are kind of populating. I'm thinking, and I would love to get your thoughts on this. I'm thinking it's just another distraction.
I don't know why our people love to ask questions. This is where data is important. We literally have generations of data regarding this. Al Sharpton is loved by white liberals, which is why he's on MSNBC. Okay. The least effective thing for our people are the most celebrated things for our people. The things that work the least to benefit our people and have us still needing some saviors, that's what's celebrated by everyone else. So Al Sharpton is perfect for that. Okay. And it's a perfect model for everyone being happy together and pretending there's some kind of outcome. The CEO for Target did that, time waster. But either way, I want our people to understand something. The moment you're talking about boycotting this one store, remember who owns the unhealthy restaurants walking distance from a lot of Black people's places of residence. Remember who owns the convenience stores, the liquor shops, the tobacco shops. Now everyone's so excited about vaping and different flavors. You know, on all these different corners, you can find fake CBD oil and all this stuff. Most of it is not owned by Black people. A lot of it's owned by actually Asians. Okay. So it actually makes a lot more sense to boycott that every day and stop consuming this and stop spending like $50 a week on that instead of worrying about DEI stuff that never was for us in the first place. But again, that would be a more long-term effect, and also was explained by Harold Cruz when he talks about the crisis of the Negro intellectuals. Al Sharpton's an example of a Negro intellectual in crisis. He talks a lot. But in terms of the outcome, it's, well, I thought things would change. What you thought things would change, what you was like burning some candles or something. This is what Harold Cruz criticized about the crisis of the Negro intellectuals. Our people love having leaders who talk a lot, who will boycott some stuff, who will mark down some streets. But what is really changing with the lasting effect that gets our people, not just some of us, but our people in general, beyond the complaint stage and moving on to saying we can have demands to outsiders, but we have some inner work we need to be doing. And Septima Clark explains that as well. Marcus Garvey explains that. Du Bois, the list goes on.
I like the way you just positioned that. And I think that's probably a voice and a message that I'm glad the class heard that. I think the larger class, the larger community needs to hear that. So if I understand your points correctly, you're saying that DEI initiatives never really help the Black community. There are other things that we should form initiatives against, such as the things in our community that are harming us that we purchase. And third, we're running around celebrating things when people are really doing nothing.
Right. And so this is again the circular logic that I referenced earlier. A lot of times when people see something good that happens, they try to attribute the good thing to a policy. And DEI would be the example here. So literally, you'll sometimes see our people will say, well, this program came to effect because of DEI or D&I or however people want to term it. And I was like, but there's no evidence of that. That could have come into effect because someone was hired and they did this program. Okay. I mean, you let some people tell it, they'll try to attach DEI to something that happened 2 centuries ago. Okay. The first Pan-African Conference took place and was, successful because of DEI. And that's, again, the circular rationale of trying to make every successful thing because of DEI. And again, this is why we do research. Whenever something is changing, you have to test for the various factors that contribute to the changes. It can't be pretending that any school, any employer, any place made improvements because DEI is the official capacity that they have. Like the diversity statements mean nothing at all times. They mean nothing. Having they mean nothing at all times. I mean, humans are wonderful actors. So people know how to say, I want a place where everyone's welcome. But then they know, because medical doctors do that, for goodness sake, and they know that there is a tendency, including Black medical doctors, for Black people's pain to be perceived different and to be responded to different, regardless of how many trainings and DEI policies and diversity statements you issue when you apply for a job. So this is just where our people have to understand that when one company says we're keeping our DEI and a school says we're keeping our DEI, like people are celebrating Harvard now. Oh, people have such selective memory. Are now people pretending that Harvard, this quote unquote prestigious, predominantly white school, has not done anything that people have complained about over generations? Oh, see how quick and easy it is for places to be supported just for saying no for something that's actually quite simplistic and basic, and they have a lot of attorneys and financial sponsors helping them do that. So this is just where our people really need to stop being so quick to jump behind everything. I mean, you can choose to jump behind it, but we can't operate on trends, because you're, like I always say, it's like a puppy chasing its tail in open land, like excited, You can't be like that, because our people are going to always chase after something brand new, because that's the catch. That's the catch. That's on the news now. That's on social media. But here's the focus. The focus is not just one issue. So it's not like people are forcing you just to have one issue, but it's a focus. And that's explained by Septima Clark, Shirley Graham Du Bois, Amy Ashford Garvey, Amy Jackie Garvey, Harold Cruz, all these. Our people have millions of Black knowledge sharers every generation. Most are not famous. And they're explaining to you there's a focus. You can notice stuff in your peripheral vision, but that doesn't mean you have to go over there, right? You can be like, yo, there's mad stuff going on in my peripheral. There's mad stuff. I've seen it. There's this boycott of this. But I don't have to go over there. Because does this really benefit, as people claim? Does this have the result that people claim? Is the causal factor that people are attributing this to something that really harmed us, like getting rid of DEI? Did that really harm us? Goodness gracious. I mean, they didn't fire their Black employees. They didn't get rid of the Black products that they're selling. It'd be one thing if they did all of that, right? And you can't promise that they were going to do all of that either, because that's a form of paranoia that our people should not adopt either.
Intriguing. Well, classmates, this I think was part one, because I know you can go in on this, and I think we need to have a really informed discussion with all the papers. So I think that's going to be my homework. I'm going to look up all the groups that are doing these boycotts and strategies against, and let's see if we find any evidence that demonstrates efficacy. And I know you're saying it's a waste of time.
None of
you
them
don't
have
need
evidence,
to.
so.
It's a waste of time.
Yeah,
Like,
Don't waste time on that. What I really want is our people to have access to the Black organizations and non-Black who are collaborators without being controllers, who are doing some beneficial programs that help people's spending habits and savings habits. It doesn't mean that adults are stupid and need to be rescued. It means that there are a lot of people, I mean, as a culture, they're just people who go based on what they're taught to do, right? Just like you still have people who keep money under their mattress and money in their bra, right? So it's not about being stupid. It's just about understanding that there's some cultural components for every culture around the world, not just our people, that exist a lot of times, perhaps because of problems. You know, you had to hide your money because it'll be taken from you by various factors. But now we have to say, how are we going to shift that? How are we going to shift it into something that's more beneficial for our people, and teaching that from generation to generation? If people want to boycott something, that's fine. But we really do not want to teach future generations of our people that you're boycotting it because they don't do diversity. Because if you think about this from an adult mindset, just saying that they don't do diversity, it now has to have a larger explanation of what that entails. Because you're not providing data that proves that they were changing their employees. If it's a school, there's no evidence that they're changing their student body. Number one, even if they did have more Black people and more non-Blacks who are not white in the student body, most places curriculums don't change. It's still mostly white references used in the curriculum anyway. So adding some stuff does not mean anything. So this is where I just want our people to understand. So like, of course, with the work that I do, I always say my motto is discuss diversity daily, 365 diversity, not your typical diversity training, because it's easy to be opposed to certain stuff. It's easy to be offended. We've all been through those stages. It's easy to boycott some things. But see, I boycott stuff, like I previously said, I boycott a lot of stuff that's not the popular thing to boycott. I still boycott NFL after years. I boycott stuff that I'm not going to purchase in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need an announcement to do that. I don't need a pastor to announce that. I don't need to be trending on, I don't need white liberals to say that's amazing, because that's not for approval either. So I want our people to understand that boycotts, yes, they can happen in the bulk of our people, because it can be this massive appeal, a mass appeal, like Guru says.
Like Gangstar.
A gang star, that's right. It can be a
Actually,
mass
that
appeal.
would be. I'm sorry, I interrupted, but I just realized Gangstar used it, but it was the little boys group that said
Yeah. We're
got
gonna stab with the mass
money,
appeal.
yeah,
Yeah.
money growing like mass appeal. That I
Yeah.
can't. The youngsters. It was the
The
youngsters who said
youngsters.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a black and white video that they did. Yeah. So yeah, so when we're talking about building economic resources for our people, yes, we're going to still use the resources that are paid through our taxes through the government, but we have to do a whole lot, and the boycott stuff cannot be the main focus. That can't be the central focus, because you first of all have to first explain that this boycott happened for reasons beyond just this DEI title. You should have had evidence beyond that. You have to have evidence. Like, telling our people to march, protest, boycott, that's a big deal when you're trying to demand that attention. If you look at the history of Marcus Garvey, when he had the largest population of people at Madison Square Gardens, UNIA was the largest membership-based organization of our people around the world, had
Right.
more membership than the NAACP. And I'm a big, staunch supporter of UNIA. However, it became more and more difficult when our people wanted to go from, or Marcus Garvey and UNIA members wanted our people to go from talking about it to actually doing it and showing that we're building resources for our people. Because Garvey was not into racial integration, as was Du Bois. So it has to be more. And again, it's not saying that we're frowning on the people who are boycotting it, but just don't make that the black card. Like, I don't want people running around saying, oh, you're not Black if you're not doing this, because I have a long list of things that many Black people are doing that other Black people are not doing. So there's no Black card for this boycott, because I don't think there's a Black card for DEI, because I always, like I said previously, when it's helping Black people, it's not going to be the most celebrated thing. So if DEI truly was about helping Black people everywhere it existed, not only Black people, but it has to have a direct and indirect benefit for our people, right? So if that ever was the case, I promise you that there would not be a such thing as DEI offices. There would not be a such thing as entire DEI buildings receiving millions of dollars for funds and research. There would not be a such thing as DEI protests and demands from citizens and politicians. If DEI was about Black people, it would have been silenced a long time ago, similar to affirmative action.
I don't think we need to go any further. I
So
think you just said it all, Doc.
yeah, so the economic part. So we don't need DEI training for economic development. So there are some organizations I want to talk about an equity-based approach to wealth building. But a lot of times when they talk about that, even they do it based on an oppression talk. So as Black people, we don't need more oppression reminders, because that's like surface level, right? We need to go beyond the oppression talks, as our people have explained for centuries, and as Africans, we've explained for thousands of years. We know about the oppression. So if you go to any wealth building, it doesn't mean becoming a millionaire. It means reducing the likelihood of paycheck to paycheck, especially for future generations. There's still going to be struggles, but you're buffering some of that. So there are going to be trainings and resources that do talk about how financial inequities do disproportionately, based on population size, impact Black people, those of us here for centuries, not migrant populations of Africans. They'll talk about that, but that does not deserve a DEI stamp. So every time discussions of demographics and cultures are discussed, does not mean it's a DEI effort. Okay. A lot of times people do that when they see something that's an equity based, justice based format, talking about race, sexuality, gender, anything. People are like, yeah, DEI is really working. This has nothing to do with DEI. You all just love to throw those acronyms on stuff because that solidifies your belief that DEI is where it's at and humans were failing before DEI existed. And that's just, again, that's a faulty logic. It's not based on results and outcomes. And I will stop there then.
Well, class, this has been another great episode of Doc Kimya's class. If you can identify all of the hip hop references we dropped.
We struggled on the youth video. I saw them on Instagram or something like that, but we struggled on that last video. The youngsters.
Yeah, the youngsters. Yeah. If you can identify the name of the artist, the songs that we kind of reference, put it in the chat. Let's have some fun with it. And we'll see you on the next class.